Good evening, everyone. As Joan mentioned, my name is Kristina McLaren, and I am the project sponsor for the Vassal Drive Flood Risk Reduction Project. This project is located in Slaughter Creek Watershed, and it is in the neighborhood that includes and surrounds Vassal Drive. The project was initiated by a number of flood reports in the area. This is our core project team. You have myself serving as project sponsor, Rupali as my supervisor, and Joan as our public information specialist. We're all in Watershed Protection Department. Then we have Sho, who is our project manager from Capital Delivery Services. And then lastly, we have Travis and Ricky, who are the consulting engineers from the Watershed Solutions JV team. So here's an outline of what I'm going to cover in the presentation. First, we'll start off with just an overview of local flooding. Then I will introduce the project to y'all. We'll look at the impacts that the project will have in flooding in the area. Then we'll go through the next steps and the timeline for the project. We'll touch on some available resources that are there for you as residents. And then we'll end with that Q&A session at the end. Okay, so here we have two pictures. They're both from Austin, and they demonstrate the two categories of flooding that we see across the city. There's localized flooding and then creek flooding. Creek flooding is when the water level rises above the banks of the creek. And then localized flooding occurs away from the creeks and is typically a combination of a intense rainfall and an undersized drainage system. The project area, Vassal Drive, primarily experiences local flooding. Localized flooding is mainly documented through flood reports. On this city scale map, you can see the project area is on the south side and is in one area that we have a cluster of localized flooding reports. Citywide, which is what we're looking at here, we've received slightly over 6,600 reports for localized flooding to date. The reports are organized by what was reported flooding, whether it was just the street, represented by the green dots, if it reached the yard, which are the yellow dots, or if it reached a building, as shown by the red dots. Neighborhoods that were built prior to the 1980s commonly have drainage problems since the current drainage criteria was not in effect. Another contributing factor is the rainfall data that is used to design drainage systems is based on historical data. We recently adopted new rainfall data called Atlas 14 that has the latest historical data applied. Localized flooding typically doesn't have a quick or easy solution, which is why we have these CIP projects. So local flooding is primarily addressed through storm drain systems. I just kind of wanted to talk about these a little bit more before we discuss them in reference to the project. So storm drain systems consist of multiple components, of which I have the most common shown here. I'll walk through them in the order as if we were following a raindrop through the system. So we start off with rain kind of collecting on the streets and flowing to the curb and gutter on the side of the street. The curb and gutter will carry the flow to an inlet. The part of an inlet that we can see is an opening in the curb where the water gets transferred from the gutter to a subsurface storm drain. These underground pipes carry the water to an outfall where it exits the pipe into either a creek, an engineered channel, or a pond. We want to design these storm drain systems so that in most storms, the water in the road will drain quickly. Now that you're more familiar with storm drain systems and localized flooding, let's take a look at the Vassal Drive project area. This area was identified for high priority for local flooding. This is based on the flood reports, again shown in those green, yellow, and red dots. The existing storm drain system, shown in yellow, you can see that it is collecting flow from several areas in the project area and then carrying it to these two existing drainage ditches. We also call them channels that exist. The first one is between Comberg Castle and Vassal, and then the second one is between Vassal and Lancaster. The flows from both of these channels are carried underneath Comberg and then continue in open channels until they reach Comberg Detention Pond on our downstream end. The pond is serving as our downstream boundary for this project. Note that on the northeast side of Comberg, the flows are going through a concrete channel that currently runs through residents' backyards before it reaches the pond. This existing storm drain is primarily located in the street or drainage easement with a few exceptions. The system was mostly built in the 1980s, and the main cause of flooding in this area is inadequate storm drain infrastructure. Here is our proposed layout for Vassal Drive area. We analyzed multiple layouts, and this alignment provides maximum benefits while optimizing cost and constructability. So starting on our downstream ends, there will be proposed improvements to the pond that will increase its capacity to hold more water. On the northeast side of the pond, we're proposing to relocate that channel that currently cuts through the middle of the backyards on Comberg to the back of the properties. This will provide these residents with improved access to their property and also allow for increased channel capacity. The channel will end at this property corner, and then an underground storm drain shown in purple will continue to the street Comberg. As you can see, the proposed storm drain shown in purple is located in a majority of the project area. Along with this proposed storm drain pipe, there will be significantly more inlets installed to help capture the rainfall and move it from the streets to the underground pipes. We are not touching the existing channels that are between Comberg Castle and Vassal or between Vassal and Lancaster. These channels will remain in place and continue to receive the local surface runoff and the flows from the inlets that are currently connected to it. One thing that we analyze our projects for are downstream impacts, adverse impacts. This project will not increase any flow or flooding downstream of the project area, so downstream of this pond outfall. And there are also no planned improvements downstream of the pond outfall. As a part of the pond and the channel improvements that we have down here, we have to relocate a part of the wastewater line, which is shown in this dashed green, to make both utilities fit. That is why we have this additional segment of project boundary that we chase that wastewater line until the intersection of Sedgemoor and Japonica. So now I'd like to share the flooding extents that our models show in current conditions. This will be a video which I will start shortly after a little bit of explanation. A simple way to describe the way the model is set up is that we have our rainfall data is dropped onto a surface in the model that accounts for the type of land cover, topography, and soil. The model also has the storm drain system built into it. What is shown in this view is the runoff that stays on the surface, and it's going to be shown in blue. And this is the water that doesn't get absorbed into the ground or make it into that underground storm drain system, thus causing localized flooding in the area. We run different size storms in the model. Storm sizes are referred to by the chance that they will occur each year. And so that's what the annual chance stands for, AC. The smallest storm that we look at is called the 50% annual chance, since it has a 50% chance it could occur each year. The largest storm that we have modeled is called the 1% annual chance, again, representing that every year there's a 1% chance it could occur. The legend here is going to show which structures the model shows as currently impacted by the 50%, 10%, 4%, and 1% annual chance storms. The darker hued structures experience flooding more often, since the model shows they are affected even by those smaller storms. You can see as we get to the larger, less frequent events, more homes are shown to be impacted by flooding. We've shortened the video from the full model run and have it on a loop to show you the peak of the modeled storm, which what we're looking at right now is at 1% annual chance. And it's going to show you the full flooding extents in that event. As you can see by the blue throughout the project area, there are significant extents of flooding, which correlates with those drainage reports we've received for the area. According to the model, the current conditions show that 12 homes are impacted in the 50% event, 50 homes are impacted in the 10% event, 69 homes are impacted in the 4% event, and 106 homes are impacted in the 1% event. Now, this model, or these results are going to show what it would look like with the full project constructed according to our models. You can already see that the peak of the storm is significantly less than before. The proposed system does a much better job at containing most of the rainfall runoff to the drainage system or the street. This significant reduction in localized flooding results in less structures impacted. Now you'll see that in our two smaller storm events, we have no impacted homes anticipated. Then once we get to the 4% event, there's only 5 impacted homes. And in that largest storm, we went from 106 impacted homes under current conditions down to 18 after the entire project is constructed. Now let's look at the stages for a capital improvement program or CIP project. We started off with in-house feasibility. This is where we had some internal analysis of the project area. Then comes preliminary engineering, which is when a solution is identified and costs are estimated. Next step is design, which is when the details are worked out and construction plans drawn up. Up next is bidding and permitting, when a contractor is hired and all the permits are acquired. And then lastly is construction, which is when the project is built. So we're right here. We just finished the preliminary engineering and we're getting ready for that design phase. So let's talk project implementation. The current estimated cost for the full project is about $18 million. Due to the size and the cost, the Vassal Drive project will be broken down into smaller phases, which will be design and constructed as separate projects. Stormwater projects have to be constructed from downstream to upstream to avoid adverse impacts. So the first phase, phase 1, has been identified and will include the components shown on the right here. We have the pond improvements, relocating that channel that's behind Comberg from this current location to the back of the properties, and then the short bit of storm drain shown in purple, which will tie us into the street. And then on this other side, also a little bit of storm drain right there. We also have that wastewater relocation shown in green, as I mentioned earlier, that is necessary to make the proposed storm channel and pond work. The estimated cost for phase 1 at this time is about $4 million. Once we finish phase 1 design and are close to construction, we'll start design on phase 2. The boundaries of the remaining phases still need to be identified. So here are our next steps for phase 1. As I mentioned, we will be working on a detailed design. This will include multiple review sessions and design iterations. We will start working on easement and temporary workspace acquisition. For that, we'll be reaching out to some owners individually. We'll continue the public outreach by keeping the website updated and also sending out significant updates through that project listserv, which if you're not already on, then we can get you signed up. Once the final construction plan sets are complete, we will go through the bid process. There will be a public meet the contractor meeting before construction starts. And throughout, we will also be collaborating with other city utilities in the area. Here's the anticipated schedule for phase 1. So design is expected to go from spring 2024 to spring 2026. And then we would have construction starting in the fall of 26 and going through the fall of 28. This schedule is contingent on future budget and engineering analysis. Here's how you can help us on this project. Feedback is appreciated, especially if those model results we watched in the videos do or don't match with your experience. We will love to have details, photos, and videos because those are really useful. If you'd like to provide feedback, you can do so through the flooding information form on the project website, or you can email me. I'll be sharing my contact info in the website again at the end of the presentation, so don't worry if you don't have it written down just yet. Here are some other things you can do and resources you can use to address flooding. Flooding and drainage concerns can be submitted through 311. That's a phone call, or there's the new app version as shown on the right. You can avoid improvements on your property that could impact your neighbors. You can consider purchasing flood insurance. If you're interested in information about floodproofing, you can email floodpro@austintexas.gov. During significant storm events, you can check atxflood.com for road closures. And you can also sign up for warning and notifications at warncentraltexas.org and atxfloods.com. Another resource I wanted to share with you is the department's strategic plan called Rain to River. It will serve as the Watershed Protection Department's guide for our work for the next 10 years. They are seeking public input. And if you'd like to learn more about it and find out what we've heard so far, you can head to raintoriveratx.com. All right, we've reached the question and answer portion. You can use the chat feature as Joan mentioned, or if you'd like to verbally ask your question, please raise your hand. I'll leave this slide up for a moment as I hand it back over to Joan. As she starts taking the questions, I'll switch it to the last slide that has my contact info, shows contact info, and the project website.
All right, we've got one question in the chat. Will this project affect whether my home is in the floodplain? It is not right now.
So this project is making sure we have no adverse impacts. So if you're not in the floodplain currently, then this project itself will not be expanding the floodplain.
Kristina, there was a question on one of the graphics about the purple lines.
Okay.
It doesn't say which slide number it was, but the purple lines on the diagram that show the new storm drains, will they run underground or be visible above ground?
Yes. So all the proposed storm drain, as shown in purple here, will be underground. You won't be able to see it. You will be able to see, we'll be putting in inlets, like I talked about, which are those little cuts in the curb. So you'll be able to just see essentially, like on this slide, where's my storm drain system? So what will be visible day to day is inlets like this. But everything that looks like this will be underground, out of sight.
And while people are thinking of questions, I just want to take the opportunity to let you know that Kristina has presented a lot of information here. And, you know, if later this evening or in the next couple of days you think of information or questions you might have, feel free to reach out to Kristina. Her email is on the screen.
Yeah, and also, Joan, do you want to tell that we will be uploading this recording of the presentation on the project website? So if your neighbors couldn't make it today, they will be able to go to project website and hear today's conversation and send their questions.
We do have another question in the chat about the phase 1 plan. Are there other phases mapped out yet?
So right now we just have the extensive phase 1 identified. The remaining phases will still be within the project boundary that we looked at before, but we don't have them kind of spliced up quite yet. We need to work on that in the near-ish future. And that would be, once we have that figured out, that would be the kind of update that we would be putting onto the website and sending out through that listserv, email listserv.
We have another question in the chat. Keeping the grass short and the brush trimmed in the ditches helps keep the water flowing and prevents overflow into yards. Any plans to increase attention on that?
So that is something that could be reported through 311. And one of the things that the department does, we have a field operations division. And when they get reports like that, then they can go out and help clear those channels to make sure that the channels aren't blocked and they have their full capacity. So 311 would be a great resource for that.
So the next question was, will you share the deck? I joined late. Yes, we plan to post a recording of this presentation on our website in a few days. That website is at the bottom of the screen right now, austintexas.gov/Vassal. We will also email out a copy of it to those who attended the meeting this evening that are on our listserv. If you're not currently on the listserv, please email Kristina.McLaren@austintexas.gov, and we'd be happy to add you to that. But anyone who joined this meeting, if we have your email address, we will share that with you, as well as it will be publicly available to any other neighbors as well that may not have been able to join on our website in a couple days. If you think of questions in the next few days or weeks, feel free to reach out to Kristina and show. Their email and phone number are shown on the screen, and it is also available on our project website at austintexas.gov/Vassal. We appreciate you taking time out of your evening today to find out more about the project. There's one last question in the chat. When is the next meeting like this? Kristina, were we planning to have another meeting before we go to construction, I believe?
Yes. So we're going to go to that design for phase 1. And then we'll have that meet the contractor meeting that I mentioned before construction starts. And if you have any questions in the meantime, feel free to reach out. And we'll also have the updates on the website as well, like I mentioned before. Construction, so I'll go back to that slide. We're anticipating fall 2026. And I'll just say it one more time. This anticipated project is contingent on budget and engineering analysis.
I would also like to encourage you all to sign up with your email address by emailing Kristina, and encourage your neighbors to do the same, because we will be sending updates through email before actually having a meeting like this. So I guess the project website and updates through email will be the main way of communication with you all. So really encourage you all, and please spread the word in your neighborhood to add their email address to our distribution list for the project.
Great point, Macaulay.
If there are no other questions, we'll conclude the meeting, and thank you all again for joining us, and have a nice rest of your evening.
Thank you all. Have a good one.